welcome to one of our final shots of this edition of Into the Abyss. So we're talking about some contemporary classics that we've watched in the last couple of weeks. And by contemporary classics, we mean movies that were released in the 90s. That
or
we
newer.
think, or newer, that we think are worth our reviewing now. So, Tom, why don't you start off?
All right, I chose the original Scream, 1996, directed by Wes Craven, written by Kevin Williamson. I always consider Scream the bridge movie between the old horror movies of the 80s and 90s, well, 70s also, and into what we have today, because it kind of was more, a little bit more technology, though not a lot, okay? Because cell phones back then were just the big flip phones, by the way. People still had landlines. And to give you a quick synopsis, you haven't seen it, you got some issues, that you have a person dressed up with a Scream face. Well, ghost face.
Yep.
It's based on Edward Munch's Scream, okay? The old, Scream. And they have a little bit of an unhealthy obsession with horror movies, and they are killing off members of Sidney Prescott's high school class, and it wasn't, in terms of bloodshed, didn't have a too high of a number to say. Actually, it was kind of a comeback for Drew Barrymore, whose career was on the way out, but this kind of brought it back in. And it was good in terms of scares, and this is why I brought up with Kevin and Chuck earlier about horror versus thriller. I guess this does count as horror, even though it's people who are committing it. And showing a video store. If you know what those are, well, you'll never see those, kids. I'm sorry. It had some good scares. It had Party of Five's Nev Campbell. It had Skeet Ulrich. It had
Matthew Lillard.
Jamie,
what was Jamie's last name?
Jamie Kennedy.
Jamie Kennedy. Yes.
And it had the member of the Friends
Courtney
cast,
Cox, and
David Arquette. Now, what kind of kills me is a lot of these characters are now playing the older characters in movies and shows.
Was the principal?
Henry Winkler was the Fonz. No, what I said was a lot of these younger characters are now playing the older characters in movies like Riverdale. And I just realized, this came out 24 years ago. Now, it was a very good kind of a whodunit scary movie. And as I said, it was a good bridge. Yes, it's kind of a little dated because the tech is different. Yes, there are also many sequels to it. Stick with the original first, because of course it is directed by one of the masters, may he rest in peace, Wes Craven, who has a cameo in it as a janitor named Fred with a striped shirt and a hat.
I love that, yeah.
That's a good one. Yes, Scream, make sure you get a chance to see it before you see the 6 million sequels.
I would also say it's part of the segue into postmodern horror.
I was going to say the exact same
because
thing.
it basically pulled back and said, okay, we're very familiar with the horror genre, the horror tropes. Let's pull back and analyze horror as a genre.
The rules of horror, which Jamie Kennedy is he works at a video store, and he's very fluent in all the.
Did anyone here work in a video store?
No, but I knew.
I'm the only one who worked at. I worked at a Blockbuster.
I applied at a Blockbuster, didn't get the job. But yeah,
I got a job, man. Something was wrong with you.
Something is wrong with you if you can't get a job.
Jamie Kennedy's character is very familiar with the horror rules. I would go out on a limb and say it's one of the very first postmodern horror movies.
Yep.
And that it's very self-referential, but at the same time, it's still a legit movie. We're trying to figure it out.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So my two selections for contemporary classics is Lord of Illusions, starring Scott Bakula, based on the work of Clive Barker, and The Candyman, starring Tony Todd. Now, Lord of Illusions is really a good film, and it's really important for me because it's another one of those films that I saw in the theater as I was transitioning from liking only sci-fi to liking horror. Now, of course, the draw for me was Scott Bakula, as a huge Quantum Leap fan. Scott...
Man crush.
Yeah, Scott Bakula plays...
It's okay to have man crush on Scott Bakula.
Scott Bakula plays Harry D'Amour, a recurring Clive Barker character about a private detective that is always drawn to the supernatural. And I think that may have been the initial attraction to me, because as a kid, horror, obviously I wasn't really very well schooled in the diversity of horror. Mm-hmm. Growing up, I saw horror as being only slasher movies. So the idea of a detective that was drawn to the supernatural against his will, it was his fate. That was very intriguing.
It was also basically filmed as a film noir.
Yes, it was. It was very film noir. Again, clarify, it was based on Clive Barker's character, Harry D'Amour. But the idea that this was a detective, but it was a supernatural story, I really like that. And it's really a good film. There's some good moments, there's some good scare moments there, and you kind of wish the movie had done well, because I would have happily seen more movies with Scott Bakula as Harry D'Amour. If I remember correctly, it was one of those movies that kind of got a This was pre-Rotten Tomatoes, believe it or not. It kind of got an as far as the critics go, and we never saw it ever again. But Lord of Illusions is currently on Amazon Prime. If you've got that with Scott Bakula, I would definitely go check that out. Also, Scott Bakula, and I'm going to mangle her name. Famke Jensen? What's her name?
Famke Jensen.
Famke Jensen, who of course plays Jean Grey in the original X-Men. She's in that as well. Also, the Candyman. Yeah. The Candyman, which is on Netflix with Tony Todd. Now, I had only seen this in bits and pieces on different movie channels. I never watched it all the way through. When I recently rewatched it, I was really taken aback about how apparently the first couple times I watched this, I missed the fact that it was so much about urban legend and the ghetto and cultural identity, and how closely tied the Candyman legend to this cultural identity was. You know, and I was a younger viewer when I first watched the Candyman, and I was pretty much probably focused on Tony Todd and his big hook slicing people. I really wasn't focused enough on this idea of the ghetto and the projects and this identity, and that the Candyman was part of their lore. So,
to bring up on the Candyman as well, because, you know, hey, I'm the history teacher, thank you. The Carabineri projects in Chicago was a real ghetto section of the city, and in terms of, they filmed on location. So in terms of how bad that area was, that was pretty much in your face about it. And what really kind of got me for Candyman was they didn't pull any punches in terms of the horror about this monster, the Candyman himself. The one story that the boy was giving to Virginia Madsen, the main character, of a special needs boy who went to that public bathroom who ended up getting castrated. That really affected me. But then also you had this drug lord who used the name Candyman as well. And you just realize, wow, I mean, horror, really that small slip between what man does and what the mystical world does.
yeah. So those are my our recommendations for contemporary classics. Scream, which I believe is also on Netflix.
Yes.
Scream, Candyman, both on Netflix, and Lord of Illusions on Amazon Prime.